Okay, welcome to Lesson 8 of IELTS Speaking 7.5, Part 2 Advanced Answers. So again, we're talking anyone that wants to get strongly above a 6 to a 6.57, or maybe, if they're ambitious enough, 7.5. But generally we're talking a strong attempt to get way above a 6 and a 6.5. Right, so let's talk about Part 2, the long turn. Now you all know what it is, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about it here. We're going to go straight into one. So this is the first lesson of Part 2. This is quite a lexical heavy lesson. There's quite a lot of vocabulary in this lesson. Vocabulary in context, vocabulary in the context of useful lexical chunks and phrases. That means there's lots of useful phrases of language that you can learn and use in many parts of the test. So get ready to absorb a lot of vocabulary in context. Stop the video, make notes, think and practice how you can use the vocabulary. There's a lot of language in this lesson. It's very useful if you practice using it. So, and then we'll focus in the other lessons a bit more on also the techniques. Right, so let's talk about the logic of your story. So logic is key to feeling confident and delivering a good answer. The bullet points on the task booklet for Part 3 are really just a guide to help you with your logic. They usually follow a similar pattern, and they're just there to help you in your preparation stage. You don't actually have to say everything in the bullet points. That's not the purpose of them. They're to keep you on a logical track and give you a bit of a helping hand in preparation. So let's start with a real question and train ourselves from there. Right, so Part 2, question type. This is about an activity. So it's a question type related to an activity. Describe an activity that you think is good for your health. Okay, topic question, Part 2. Describe an activity that you think is good for your health. Personally, I would choose any sport or activity if I was asked this question. Any sport, anything. Why? Nearly all sports are healthy. So you get asked about a question about an activity, you can talk about sport. Even if you don't do the sport, doesn't matter. You know about sports. Sports are healthy. So think logically from the very start. Don't choose an activity which is going to be complicated to talk about, that you don't really know much about, that you think is good for your health. Choose something you can talk about in the easiest possible way. So, sports are always healthy. You can talk about any sport you feel comfortable talking about. So, Part 2 tasks. So, there's 5 bullet points here. Probably more than in an IELTS speaking test, but anyway, this is meant to be for training. So, describe an activity you think is good for your health. Say what the activity is, how you first heard about it, who you know who does it, where and when people do it, where and when people do it, why it's good for your health. So, these are going to be the kind of bullet points you'll get for any question about a sport or activity. You might get 3 of these, you might get 4 of these, but we're going to do all 5 today for practice. Right, the bullet points usually cover common WH questions, as we sometimes call them. What it is, describe it, how you first heard about it, a past first experience, who you know who does it, people, current habits, where and when you do it, people who do it, time now, where does it happen, when does it happen, why it's good, reasons and examples why people do it, or why you do it, why other people do it. So they kind of always follow this kind of general logic. So this is my introduction. I'm going to read it to you now as naturally as possible. I want you to think and listen. Hear when I'm pausing, hear when I'm stressing, listen to my pace, listen to my words, and remember the question. I'm now describing an activity which is healthy. I'd like to talk about volleyball. Volleyball is a popular team sport where 2 teams of 6 people on each team are either side of a tall net. It's a bit like a tennis net, but it's much higher than head height. Like most sports, the detailed rules are quite complicated. But simply put, the players should attempt to hit the ball over the net with their hands and keep a rally going back and forth without the ball touching the floor. Players are not allowed to catch the ball, and the ball must not touch the net. Okay. Introduction. Let's talk about introductions. So, we start by describing what the activity is, or the object, or the event and occasion, or the person, or the place. In this case, the activity. Note, a well-delivered introduction might take you 20 or 30 seconds. That's 25%. That's a quarter of your whole Part 2 long term. So practice doing good introductions to activities, objects, events, people, occasions, because that's quarter of the whole 2 minutes. Think about it like that. So do a great introduction. It's very important. And it's really good practice to train yourself to do various types of introductions as well. So, describing activities. Remember, we're talking about an activity. I described an activity. You would overview the sport or game. You might talk then about the teams. You might mention something about the players. Not much, just a small detail. You might talk about the pitch, the court, the place where the game is played. You might talk about the objective, the aim of the game, what the point of the game is. You might mention a rule or 2. So look at mine again. I'd like to talk about volleyball. Volleyball is a popular team sport. So I've given an overview. A simple overview. Volleyball is a popular team sport. I've described it as popular. I've said what kind of sport it is. It's a team sport. Now I go into more depth. Where 2 teams of 6 players, so I've mentioned the teams, there's 2 teams. I've mentioned the amount of players, 6 players, are either side of a tall net. It's a bit like a tennis net, but it's much higher than head height. So I've talked about the place where the game takes place. And a detail, the net. It's higher than head height. It's the court, the net, the space, the area where the sport takes place. Simply put, the players should attempt to hit the ball over the net with their hands and keep a rally going back and forth without the ball touching the floor. So that's the objective. That's the aim of the sport. The players should attempt to hit the ball over the net with their hands, keep a rally going back and forth without the ball touching the floor. That's the main objective. Players are not allowed to catch the ball, and the ball must not touch the net. That's a rule. 2 little rules. I'm not describing all the rules in volleyball. I don't even have to describe them accurately, but I'm giving a general overview. So I've talked about the overview of the game, teams and players, the place and the court, the objective of the game, and a rule or 2. That's a good formula to remember if you're asked about an activity and you choose a sport. So practice this with all the sports you know. Overview, team and players, place and court, objective, a rule or 2. And again, look how short these phrases are. Not massive amounts of detail, not lots of specific vocabulary, but well-used, flexible, great English. So, describe a sport in 20 seconds. This is a task. You can pause the video after I finish this slide. So go online, search in English, in Wikipedia or another English language website. Look up some of your favorite sports. Read how they are described. Note the different words for the place where the activity is played and the things in that place, the floor, the net, things like this. They're related to the place. Follow my logical steps above and write a little sentence for each to describe every sport that you check online that you like doing or you like watching. Check and polish your descriptions and learn them. This is a great exercise. Go and do it now. Right, describing sports. Let's look, excuse me, let's look at some more examples. Basketball. It's a really popular sport in China today, played and supported by university students and most young people. That's my overview of basketball. It involves 2 teams of usually 5 players on each team and is played on a rectangular court. So I've talked about the teams, the players, and the place together. The aim of the game is to bounce and throw and pass the ball to your team members and throw the ball through a net on the opponent's side to score points. That's the objective of the game, the aim of the game. So I've talked about objective, teams, players and place, and obviously started with an overview. Key vocabulary here. A basketball court is a rectangular court. To pass the ball, to bounce the ball, to throw the ball, or to dribble a ball, to score points, a field goal, to shoot the ball into the net. It can be played indoors or outdoors. It's an Olympic sport. The NBA is the world's most famous basketball association. So my point with this slide here is I'm making notes. I'm adding extra information. These are things I can learn and I can put into an answer about basketball, and I will sound like a native because I'm using the words correctly in the places they should be used, and I'm adding interesting information. Language patterns. Now, notice some of the language patterns that are coming out while I'm talking about this. They're naturally coming out because I'm a native speaker, but you can write these down, you can use them. It is played by, we've got a passive here, it's played by 2 teams. It's played by individuals. It's played by 4 players. It is popular with young people, older people, girls. So we've got types of people. We're saying who likes it. It's popular with. It involves 2 teams passing a ball, running. It involves. That's where we say what the people do, what it involves people do. Involves 2 teams who pass the ball. The aim of the game is to, plus verb. The aim of the game is to. A great structure we use when talking about the objective of a game. The aim of the game is to pass the ball between the players and score a field goal by shooting the ball in the net. To throw the ball through a net, into a net. To shoot the ball through a net, into a net. On the opponent's side, on the opposite team's side, on the opponent's side of the court. On the opponent's side of the court, to score points, to score a goal. So this is key lexis you'd use to talk about most ball sports. But again, look up your favourite sports and write down the equivalent phrases for each one so you can get them right when speaking and practice writing sentences like this. So, a triathlon. I'm going to talk about a triathlon now, or taking part in a triathlon, using the same, more or less the same general formula. A triathlon is a race that consists of 3 different sports in one continual race: running, swimming, and cycling. It has become increasingly popular in China in recent years. So that's my general overview description of a triathlon. Many athletes can take part in a triathlon. Athletes race as individuals, not in teams, usually. Now I've talked about the teams, the players, and the place. Many athletes can take part in a triathlon. Athletes race as individuals, not in teams. Contestants compete for the fastest times to reach the finish line, like any other race. So contestants compete for the fastest times to reach the finish line, the objective. In this case, it's a race, not a match, because it's individuals racing towards a line where they finish. Key vocabulary with a triathlon or any other race. A triathlon is a race that consists of, plus some details. That consists of. Table tennis consists of two players, a ball and a table. It has become increasingly popular in China. A good detail you can put anywhere. This sport has become more and more popular in China in recent years. Many athletes can take part in a triathlon. To participate, can take part in a triathlon. Lots of students today like to take part in competitive sports. So again, the lexical chunks we're using here can be used in a big variety of answers relating to all sorts of parts of the test, especially when asked about activities and sports. So key vocabulary continued. Athletes race as individuals. So we do a sport as an individual or as a team. It is an individual sport. An individual sport, not a team sport. It's an individual sport, not a team sport. Athletes race as individuals. Contestants are people who take part in competitive sports. We can call them contestants or participants. Athletes is the word we usually use for competitive sports that take place in track and field events. Track and field events will be like a running race, a running circuit, this kind of thing, rather than a team sport. Track and field events. Competitors. We can use this word when we're talking about any contestants in a sports game, a race, or a match. So, contestants, athletes, competitors. Climbing. Let's talk about climbing. Climbing is an activity where a participant uses their hands and feet to ascend a real or artificial rock face. It is an outdoor pursuit and also sometimes a competitive sport. So that's my overview. It's an outdoor pursuit. It's like saying an outdoor activity. It's an outdoor pursuit and also sometimes a competitive sport. Sport climbing is almost always done on a special wall. I don't know what the wall is called, but I know it's a special wall. It's kind of paraphrasing, you know. You don't have to know lots of technical vocabulary, but you have to be able to describe in a natural way. I don't know, as a native speaker who doesn't know much about sport, what this special wall is called. But I do know that sport climbing is almost always done on a special wall, an artificial rock face. So I've talked about the place that it's done, even though I don't exactly know whether there's a special name for this. Climbers compete against each other on speed of ascending the wall, technique, and style. So I've talked about teams, participants, and my objective here. So notice I'm using the formula somewhat flexibly, but I'm still giving an overview, talking about the place it's done, talking about the people that participate, and talking about the objective of the sport. We need to get these things in when we're describing a sport or activity. Again, it'll be 25% of your part 2, and you'll feel you've done well before you're even, while you're almost there. Key vocabulary for climbing. Climbing is an activity where a participant, use this phrase for any sport or activity. Climbing is an activity where a participant uses their hands and feet. A participant, if you don't know the name for the particular person in this particular sports competition, call them a participant. That's perfectly acceptable, very good English. It's an outdoor pursuit and also sometimes a competitive sport. So an outdoor pursuit is like a fun sporting activity you'll do outside, A competitive sport is one that, you know, there were official games, competitions, Olympics with scores and a winner and a loser. So it's, you know, climbing is sometimes just an outdoor activity for fun and challenge, and sometimes it's actually also a competitive Olympic sport. So an outdoor pursuit is usually an adventurous sport or activity in which individuals participate, and it has a relationship usually towards nature, like water rafting or skiing or cross-country running, an outdoor pursuit. Again, this you might call a less common lexical item, an idiomatic expression, but it's very common for a fluent native speaker. So again, the words in bold here, I suggest you take them, you use them, manipulate them into your own contexts. Key vocabulary continued for climbing. Climbers, contestants, participants compete against each other on. Contestants compete against each other on who can get to the top first. So on plus the objective. Participants compete against each other for who is the fastest and strongest with the best technique. Players compete against each other for a special trophy. The winners are those that reach the top the fastest with the better technique and style. So we've got compete against each other on who can get to the top, or who can get 50 points, or whatever the objective is. Compete against each other for who is the fastest, or compete against each other for a special award or trophy. Again, use these phrases plus prepositions correctly. Your score will start really increasing above a 6.5. So how do contestants win contests? Winning in different sports. Winners are those that score the most goals in the time. We say in the time because there's usually a specific time for a sports match or game. Winners are those that score the most goals in 45 minutes, in 90 minutes, in the time. Winners are those that reach the finishing line first. Winners are those that reach the finishing line first. Winners are those that score the most points by the end of the game. Winners are those that score the most points by the end of the game, before the end of the game. There is a first, second and third prize represented by gold, silver and bronze medal winners. Winners are decided by a panel of judges. We call it a panel of judges, a group of 3 or 4 judges who score contestants on style and technique, like diving or ice skating or dancing. Winners are decided by a panel of judges who score contestants on style and technique. Again, you can use all these phrases when talking about, just know how to use them and for what types of activity. Pause the video at any time to write these down and start putting them into contextually related sentences. So, a note on verbs plus activities, because this keeps happening. People with high potential scores keep making persistent basic errors. So verbs for activities. Sometimes we use do, sometimes we use play, and sometimes we use go for a sport or activity. Here are some main examples. People do gymnastics. They do martial arts. They do weightlifting. They do aerobics. They do yoga. They do wrestling. They do athletics. People play games. They play badminton. They play hockey. They play bowls. They play rugby. They play golf. People play cricket. They play basketball. They even play cards. So, some verbs we use do. Some activities we use do. Some activities we use play. Go. Look at the kinds of activities. We go fishing. We go skiing. We go cycling. We go bowling. We go surfing. He went skateboarding last weekend. but he went hiking. He loves to go swimming. She loves sailing. I am absolutely, totally into running. I love snowboarding. I don't like hill walking. Go hill walking. I don't like going hill walking. I don't like going snakeboarding. I don't like going running. She doesn't like to go sailing. So notice we can say go, to go, or going. So get this right. He does athletics every Thursday, evening after school. He does martial arts on Saturdays. She regularly plays badminton with a local team. She loves golf, but doesn't play very often. He likes to go fishing on his own in the spring. He likes to go snowboarding and hiking in the mountains. So learn them in phrases and contexts like these examples, and write down some examples of your own. Again, you'll remember to get them right if you write down examples of your own and speak them out. So, part 2, task review. Whoa, we've done so much on activities, maybe you've forgotten what we were doing. We were talking about part 2, the long term. Describe an activity that you think is good for the health, remember? Say what the activity is, how you first heard about it, who you know who does it, where and when people do it, why it's good for your health. Introduction. I'm going to read it again. I'd like to talk about volleyball. Volleyball is a popular team sport where 2 teams of 6 players on each team are either side of a tall net. It's a bit like a tennis net, but it's much higher than head height. Like most sports, the detailed rules are quite complicated, but simply put, the players should attempt to hit the ball over the net with their hands and keep a rally going back and forth without the ball touching the floor. Players are not allowed to catch the ball, and the ball must not touch the net. So, part 2 task. Describe an activity that you think is good for your health. So, I've just described what the activity is, following the formula that we've just learned. Now I'm going to move on to my next point. My next part is to talk about how I first heard about it. So bullet point 2. How I first heard about it. Well, I first heard about volleyball from some classmates, and I remember seeing a game on television. I first played it, however, many years later on the beach with some friends on holiday. From the very first moment I started playing it, I found it really exhilarating and fun. I liked the team spirit and the speed of the game. Playing on the sand on the beach is especially exciting. So how I first heard about it. Look at the set phrases and lexical chunks we can use in this. I first heard about volleyball from some classmates. I first heard about something from someone, something, something. I first heard about something from someone, something, something. I remember seeing a game on television. I remember first witnessing a game on television. I remember experiencing a game when my friends were playing in school. Get the tenses right. Remember plus ing. I first played it many years later on the beach. I first played it myself many years later on the beach. I first played it plus a time phrase in 1989 on holiday 5 years ago on the beach. So I first played it plus time plus place. Again, use these chunks, stop the video, write them down, practice them. You think you know them, but you're probably not using them like a native, which won't get the higher score. How I first heard about it continued. I first played it many years later on the beach on holiday with some friends. Many years later, time phrase. On the beach, place phrase. On holiday, event time phrase. With some friends, added detail, who was there. Look at the formula. Time phrase, place phrase, event phrase, with some people, with some friends, added detail, who was there. So, how I first heard about it continued. Set phrases you can learn. I heard about it. I saw it on TV. I've always known about it. Everyone knows this sport. My friend introduced it to me in high school. It became popular in university in the 1980s. I learned about this through my friend John. I first heard about it from a workmate. So there's lots of phrases, set phrases. Learn all of these. Lots of set phrases. I heard about it or I saw it on TV. I've always known about it. Everyone knows this sport. My friend introduced it to me in high school. It became popular in university in the 1980s. I learned about this through my friend John. I first heard about it from a workmate. I first heard about it from a workmate. So, how I first heard about it continued. You can say how you felt the first time you heard about it. That makes you sound quite intelligent. That's advanced English. That's advanced logic in developing. From the very first moment I started playing it, I found it really exhilarating and fun. From the very first moment plus past simple. I found it plus adjectives of feeling. I thought it was especially exciting. Adverb plus adjective. I thought it was amazingly fun. Adverb plus adjective. I found it incredibly challenging but rewarding. Incredibly challenging, incredibly rewarding. Adverb plus adjective. See, I'm sounding completely like a native. And none of these words are complicated, but it's the way they're put together. From the very first moment I started playing it, I found it really exhilarating, really fun, incredibly exciting, especially interesting, challenging, rewarding. Wow, I sound really native and I sound really fluent. And I'm not actually speaking that fast. And I'm pronouncing every one of my words very clearly. Right, so, part 2 task, where were we? Who you know who does it. Who you know who does it. Wow, this is simple, this is short. A few friends from university like to play volleyball. We are a mixed team of boys and girls. A few friends from university like to play volleyball. We are a mixed team of boys and girls. Not every part of your answer needs to be developed or expanded. Use your common sense. Sometimes you just got to say a simple sentence. A few friends from university like to play volleyball. We're a mixed team, boys and girls. It's a great sentence. It's nice, it's simple, it's really native, sounds great. Who you know who does it. You could say, who plays it plus a small description. That's your formula, that's it. A few friends from university like to play volleyball. We're a mixed team of boys and girls. So, answer the question, who plays it? Added a detail. You could say, my workmates do this together in small teams. Usually older people play this game in groups of 4. Lots of school kids enjoy participating in this activity. See, different ways of saying who you know who does it. So, we can move on to where and when people do it. Where and when people do it. Where and when do people do it? Spot the extra information I'm adding here to sound more native, to add more of a detail, to add some personality. We train twice a week in the campus sports hall. We play both friendly games and very serious competitions. Sometimes we play against the volleyball teams of other universities in the city. Last year we came second out of all the teams that took part in the tournament. Look again, it's a developed, nuanced answer. We train twice a week in the campus sports hall. We play both friendly games and very serious competitions. Sometimes we play against the volleyball teams of other universities in the city. Last year we came second out of all the teams that took part in the tournament. What's the extra information here? Let's have a look. Let's break it down. We train twice a week in the campus sports hall. So, when and where? I've said when because a sport is something we often do regularly, so we've used an expression of frequency in the campus sports hall. We usually play both friendly games and very serious competitions. The types of games we play. We usually play, again, we've got an adverb of frequency in there. We usually play friendly games and very serious competitions. Sometimes we play against the volleyball teams of other universities in the city. Extra information there, but it's interesting. Sometimes we play against the volleyball teams of other universities in the city. Nice sentence, high scoring. Last year, we came second out of all the teams that took part in the tournament. So again, we got a bit of extra information, but it's a when, it's a past experience, bit of extra information. So we're using the past simple. Last year, we came second. And notice, in every example, we've got an adverb of frequency here. Twice a week, usually, sometimes, last year. These adverbs of frequency are very, very useful. Right, so finally, part 2, task's final bullet point, why it's good for your health. Why it's good for your health. Well, this activity is good for your health because it's healthy to take regular, vigorous exercise. Exercise that involves lots of running around quickly and moving in different ways is good for the heart and the muscles. It's always beneficial to keep fit and in shape, and volleyball is a great way to have fun while working off the calories. Okay, it sounds like a TV advert a little bit, but we got some good language in there. Well, this activity is good for you because it's healthy to take regular, vigorous exercise. It's a statement of sort of common universal fact. Well, it's good for you because it's healthy to take regular, vigorous exercise. It's obvious, no? It's healthy to take regular. Vigorous means intense exercise. Exercise that involves a lot of running around quickly. That involves a lot of running around quickly and moving in different ways is good for the heart and the muscles. It's always beneficial to keep fit and in shape. And volleyball is a great way to have fun while working off the calories. So all of these phrases that I've put in bold here can actually be used for any sport that you're talking about, pretty much. Why is it good for your health? To take vigorous exercise. Exercise that involves lots of running around quickly and moving in different ways is good for the heart. It's beneficial to keep fit and in shape. Volleyball is a great way to have fun while working off the calories. Pause, note down these kind of phrases. Think about how you can talk about different sports or activities, but using exactly the same phrases. Our mental health. How something makes us feel. Doing this activity is very stimulating and exciting. It's very challenging and rewarding. Is great for mind and body. Helps to foster. Foster means develop, encourage in a group of people. Helps to foster teamwork amongst people. Helps to foster healthy competition and positivity amongst people. These are great phrases. Again, do they relate to volleyball? No. They relate to any possible outdoor activity. You could use these kinds of phrases. Copy them, use them, write them into examples of your own. Concluding advice. Pay close attention because you'll see most of the time I advise my learners to not pay too much attention to topic-related vocabulary and not to obsess about knowing the latest topics. This is true. I believe in structures, lexical chunks and their flexible use. However, there are some areas, like this one, sports and activities, where lots of lexical chunks on topic terms are very useful to develop your answer. And you've got to get those words right, because different activities have different phrases that go with them. We've covered many today. That's why I gave you more examples today about different types of sports, from climbing to volleyball. Study this lesson carefully then. Go back, practice lots of the language, and see kind of which activities some of my topic-based vocabulary relates to, and all the other slides where I said write your own examples. You can, at your level, use your common sense. You'll see from my examples which sports they fit with and which they don't. So give this a good practice, because sports and activities are going to be very similar, and there's a lot of questions in the test, even in part 1, about sports and activities. So it's good to be able to have a basic flexible use of language. Again, nothing very, very complicated. We've covered nothing highly complicated today, but it's very specifically targeted and very flexibly used. Template here. Part 2 activity template. I like to have these templates to get our minds in the right place for preparation. So start preparing a part 2 using a template like this. Any part 2, in this case, this is for activity you're asked about, any activity. So the stage, these are like the bullet points, describing it, how you knew it, who was involved in it, where and when it's done, why it's good. See, this is a little bit different to what we learned today, because I want to show how things are slightly flexible, they're slightly fluid, but you can use the same language. So use this template to do the following questions. So use the template I've just shown you, read these questions here, and describe an outdoor activity you think is good for children to do in school. Something you did in a physical education lesson that you think is good for people. An activity that you believe is not good for people's health. So that's 3 long turns here, 3 monologues, okay? 1, but use the same template for each one. An activity you think is good for children to do in school. That's 1 2-minute long turn. Something you did in a physical education lesson that you think is good for people. That's another long turn. Use the template, prepare it. An activity you believe is not good for people's health. See how you can tackle that one. Slightly different. Is it the same template? Give it a go. See what you feel. So use the advanced high-scoring collocations and lexis that we've learnt today, and really make sure you prepare all 3 of these using the template, then write them out, then record yourself. This will be excellent practice for any question related to activities that comes up in the speaking test. So make sure you use the template, check your logic, note down phrases, words, expressions you want to use in each part as well. Write out your talk on paper. This is good training, good practice, but don't memorize it. Check your grammar, your structures, your linking words, your sequencing words. If you're using the past tense, get it right. Practice it. Record yourself on a DRD. Play it back to yourself. Analyze yourself. Examine yourself. Find your faults. Correct yourself. Do it again. Do this several times with all 3 of these, with all this language I've just taught you, and you will feel really confident about these kind of questions in your part 2. Okay, thank you very much. It's enough talking from me. Goodbye for now.